On October 2016, I got that call that every parent dreads. But I will tell you, Mark, it's not a call that I didn't expect. They found our oldest son, Seth, 23, in a chair in a hotel room, needle in his arm, tourniquet on his bed. But there's something about getting right to the edge of the abyss, man. You and I have talked what it's like to be looking over that edge and being so close to the end of everything, and then somebody reaches in and pulls you out. That's the beauty of advocacy. That's the beauty of friendship. That's the beauty of empathy and courage and love and inspiration.
It's The Journey with drug and alcohol attorney Mark G. Astor.
Welcome to The Journey with Mark Astor. I'm your host, Mark Astor. I've spent a lot of years sitting across the table from people during some of the most challenging moments of their lives. As an attorney, an advocate, and as someone who understands that the road isn't always straight. What I've learned is that success, recovery, and growth rarely look the way we expect them to. There are detours, hard conversations, and moments that change everything. On this podcast, I talk with people who are willing to be honest about their journey, what has worked, what didn't, and what they wish they knew sooner. This is going to be a doozy, okay? I've got a good friend of mine, Jeff Johnston, who is with us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, but I don't think I could possibly do him justice. Jeff is an entrepreneur, but I think that's just a small part of his journey, and you're going to hear all about it. But in 2016, he lost his oldest son, Seth, to fentanyl poisoning. 5 years later, he also lost his wife, and that sent him spiraling into his own universe of addiction and substance use. In 2017, he decided to make a change, and he committed to recovery. And over the past several years, he's launched national mental health projects, creating platforms for open conversation. And he has spoken with literally thousands of people who are navigating their own storms. Today, he is the founder and CEO of Brighton, which is an upstream behavioral health platform embedded directly with other platforms, employer networks, and health systems. Their mission is simple: deliver daily emotional support, resilience tools, and early risk detection in the places where people already live and receive care. He also launched the podcast, The Undeterred, and wrote a book, This One's For You, and founded the Living Undeterred Project, a nonprofit dedicated to healthier, more intentional living. His only downfall is that he is a big Iowa fan, unfortunately. He lives in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, with his sons, Ian and Roman, and he continues to build companies. Jeff, I don't know if I did you credit, but I'm so glad that you are here. And I was so inspired when we met that I had to have you on the show. So welcome.
I'm excited to be here. Hawkeye to Michigan. Go Big Ten, right? Yeah, I listen to you read all that, and I think to myself, if I didn't know Jeff, I think this guy's kind of got his shit together and then he's structured and he's got all these things going. But I think to myself, I just wake up and make up stuff every day. I like to think that I'm organized and that I have all this figured out. But man, I wake up and most days I have no idea what I'm going to do. But the key is I just do. And that's what I try to tell people is just be in action.
So let's go back in time a little bit. In a past life, I know that you were an investment advisor. So tell us about that, how long you did that for, and then obviously we can talk about that tragic event in 2016.
It all started back when I was in, I think, a senior in high school when the movie Wall Street came out with Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen. And I know it's not the best role model type movie, but it got me excited about the stock market. Itself is a story about greed and corruption. But that's when I decided I was going to major in money, basically. So I decided to get a finance degree. And I played two sports in college. I played basketball and golf. And so once I figured out that, look at this guy, I'm not going to play. I took my talents to about the highest level I possibly could in athletics. And I decided I'll get into Wall Street. That's what I thought. I got accidentally recruited into an insurance agency out of college and ended up selling life insurance door to door for a year. So I'm 23. Living in my parents' basement, selling life insurance door to door, no pitch decks, no cell phones, no internet, selling an intangible product like retirement. Like I couldn't pull up in a Cadillac and say, here's my Cadillac I'm selling, or a house or a boat. So I really think I got thrown into the hardest sales job you possibly can be into when you're young. And that's selling something that you can't touch, smell, feel. You have to conceptualize it. So I learned the hard way how to sell. And so did that for a couple of years, got into investments, and then fast forward, boom, all of a sudden I'm 50 in 2016 and married the love of my life, Prudence. I literally woke up, I was living in a almost a 6,000 square foot house, about 5,500, 3 boys, Seth, Ian, and Roman, traveling the world, beautiful wife, fast car, sports car. I'm thinking, all right, dude.
You made it.
Yeah, man, this is it, right? This is success. And there was fist fights along the way. It wasn't easy. It never is. But I really felt like now it's time to maybe wind it down a little bit. Golf, scuba dive, things I like to do, and ride off into retirement. Life had a different plan for me. On October 4th, 2016, I got that call that every parent dreads. But I will tell you, Mark, it's not a call that I didn't expect. They found our oldest son, Seth, 23, in a chair in a hotel room, needle in his arm, tourniquet on his bed, ran into fentanyl on his addiction experience, and started with Adderall at 15, and it was fentanyl. And in between, we had drunk drivings, breaking and enterings, cocaine, prison, everything you could possibly imagine you thought was rock bottom. And as it turned out, the ultimate rock bottom is always death. And that really was the first time in my life that I had thought I had everything figured out, and death or life came into me and said, hey, Jeff, we're going to take somebody that you care about. What are you going to do about it? And that's the story that I tell myself now, but that's not what I told myself when I got the call Seth died. You can imagine the tremendous amount of guilt and shame and just suffering that you go through. It's unimaginable. And then obviously, as you alluded to in the opening, it got worse. But there's something about getting right to the edge of the abyss, man. You and I have talked what it's like to be looking over that edge and being so close to the end of everything. And then somebody reaches in and pulls you out. And that's the beauty of advocacy. That's the beauty of friendship. That's the beauty of empathy and courage and love and inspiration. And I owe so many people for pulling me out of that abyss to this day. And you're on that list, giving me a platform to talk, to share the story. So people that are fighting and going through these struggles, we can normalize them and humanize them and not pathologize them and judge people. There's enough of that going on today.
How long had Seth been dealing with this?
At 15, we were going to parent-teacher conferences in school, and the teachers kept saying, your son's disruptive, he's the class clown, his grades aren't good. And I'm like, well, that's me pretty much. I never made honor roll, ever, in high school. I always started drinking at 16, so I got in trouble. So I didn't think it was anything abnormal. I just thought it was normal, actually. What 16-year-old boy doesn't sit in class and not think about algebra? I don't know what you're thinking about at 16, but it sure how it wasn't math.
It wasn't math.
No, that was the last thing. So the teacher said, Seth needs to go see a doctor. That's what I did, Mark. Took him in to see a doctor. A couple meetings later, we walked out with this convenient label, attention deficit disorder. Oh, by the way, your son's diseased. Here's a pill. If you don't take it, he'll turn into a werewolf at midnight and eat all of his friends. That's how it was presented, this disease of attention deficit disorder, which is the most criminal thing we possibly can do, especially children today, is find these convenient name it, detain it labels. So we can come up with a name. Thus, now we're allowed to come up with the antidote. You have to have a demon before you can kill it. And I watched Seth struggle from the minute he took his first Adderall. Never, ever recovered.
You think that was the catalyst?
I know it was the catalyst. He had other issues that were underpinning, but none of those weren't so difficult that we couldn't have worked through those through just normal maturation, just getting older, just getting wiser, getting more lived experience, love and empathy instead of fear and scarcity, which is what the medicine did to him. Told him he was disordered and he had a problem and he needed to take this pill. And so that mindset became his marching orders, and he started abusing the Adderall, selling it at school. This was when kids took Adderall more than adults. Now Adderall is prescribed more to adults than children. But if I had to go back and reverse engineer, Mark, that's where I came up with the beginning of where all this started with Seth.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, I've spoken to literally thousands of parents over the years. Between my wife and I, we have 6 doctors in the family. None of them are psychiatrists, but I am shocked by how many parents call us and tell us a similar story where, listen, my parents sent me to an old boys private school. If I didn't sit still, I got rapped on the knuckles. That was the end of that.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Or my dad said,
Yep.
listen, guess what? You're not going to camp next week. Forget it. Canceled. Your grades suck. When you get your grades up, you can go to camp. And that was the end of that.
That's the world you and I grew up in.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is that this is not your fault and it's not any other parent's fault because nobody knows any better. We trust our doctors to do the right thing for us.
My dad's a doctor. I was careful when I started my advocacy about just blaming there's plenty of blame to go around when a child dies of drugs or alcohol or substance abuse. I'm sure there's things I failed as a dad. I'm sure there's things Seth failed to as a curious, learning young adult, or maybe not failed at, but maybe could have done better at, let's say. Things my wife certainly could have done better. His friends could have done. So when someone dies like this, there's plenty of like fingers to point around. What I didn't want to do, Mark, is just blame everybody. So that first year or two, I went through a tremendous amount of guilt and shame and blame myself for Seth's death. And then through a process of many things, which I can share in a few minutes with you, I've learned to give myself some grace and mercy, try to look at these things as life lessons versus penalties that someone was trying to punish me because I wasn't a good dad. I don't really believe in that. I believe that Seth ran into fentanyl. And if it wasn't that day, the way fentanyl became so mainstream, I never heard of fentanyl when Seth died, Mark, and there was 42,000 Americans had died that year. I think its peak was 112 overdoses. Everybody now knows not only what fentanyl is, but how to spell it. And they know how much 2 grains of salt, basically, of fentanyl can kill a human. So it's like, I have to be able to take what happened in our family and learn from it. And that's what my advocacy is all about. Not a sad, sappy story. I don't want to walk into a room and say, oh my gosh, here comes that guy that lost half his family. That sucks. Let's go up and give him a hug. That's pity. I don't want any pity. I want you to say, hey, Jeff, how can I help? And that's what you did by having me on your podcast, Mark. First time we met, you invited me on the show. And what you did is you said, how can I help? Not, oh, good luck. And that's what we all have to do.
Yep. I appreciate you saying that. Let's talk about what happened. I know this had a profound effect on your wife. So can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah. I remember the day Seth died. And after I went through my shock, I then realized I had to drive home and tell Prudence that Seth was dead. And you play every scenario in your head. And I wanted to get it over with quickly. We were heading off to watch our son golf that day for districts, my son Ian, our middle son. And I was actually dropping Ian off at the golf barn where the kids were getting ready to go play districts that day when I got the call that his brother died. And I just remember getting in my car and thinking, how am I going to tell Prudence? And then when I got home, I was shaking, hyperventilating. I couldn't talk. And I remember just coming around the corner and she had her orange and black hat on, Cedar Rapids Prairie Golf, and a cup of coffee. And she's on the phone with her friend talking about the day ahead. And I was just trembling. And all I said is, Seth is dead. And we both hit the ground like lead weights. And then what seemed like an eternity of time was reality, maybe a few minutes. We just pulled ourselves up. And I don't know what time it transpired, but we ended up at the hotel where Seth was found. So a few hours it went by. He was only about an hour away. And they had already taken his body. And Prudence and I were sitting there and they asked him if I wanted to go into the room. She didn't want to go in. And I said, yeah, I'll go in. And this became a part of my book that I wrote about what I saw in that room. And I had to sit in that chair, Mark. I had to sit in that chair to see like the last view my son had before he died. And I looked over in his bed. His bed was neatly made. So he was going to shoot up with heroin and just pass out and go to bed and get him to work the next day. And he'd just been trying heroin. He'd just been released from prison. So, maybe 7 times, I think, based on the needle marks they said. So he wasn't a heroin addict. Not that it matters. But heroin was just something he was experimenting with, and he ran into something. Anyway, on his bed was his belt, and it was still in the tourniquet shape. And I took that belt with me when I went around the United States for 22,000 miles for 95 days, and the belt was in the RV with me the whole time. And it became a symbol, what I thought initially it would be a symbol of hope. But as I can share later, it actually became a weight on me and almost killed me. And I did something very ceremonial with the belt I can share too. That's, again, part of this whole thing has been an evolution of myself. A chapter closes, another one opens. A chapter closes, another one opens. And really that happens to all of us. Kids grow up, they move out, they get married. That's a chapter. Someone dies, that's a chapter. So my story is my story. I don't think it's tragic. It's certainly unfortunate. As I told you, I think we first met, to me, tragedy is a dad I know whose 5-year-old drowned in his pool they built. That's tragedy. Someone who dies of substance abuse and addiction, that's preventable. And it's also predictable. Those outcomes are highly predictable. So initially, I guess I accepted this tragedy, I guess people would say, but no, I don't feel what happened to Seth and Prudence was tragic. So I'll finish what happens. I decided to stay home for about a year and a half, Mark, and work, because what people don't know, and I shared with you when we first met, but I've been an alcoholic since 16 years old. I started drinking alcohol sophomore, junior in high school, went to a small Iowa town here. All through college, I drank. All through building up my investment company, I drank. I was what's considered a high functioning. Apparently, there's a lot of them, even women. It's not just men are high functioning alcoholics. I could drink 6 days a week for 30 years and get up at 6:37, work my ass off, and then at 5 o'clock, man, drink. And like my good friend Charlie Engel says about whether you know you're an alcoholic or not is when alcohol stops serving you. And at that point, it stopped serving me, probably previously. And so I stayed home to work on my family. Seth died. My wife's a wreck. I'm a wreck. We have 2 boys, 13 and 15. So we stayed home for a year and a half. And what everyone thought I was doing when I stepped back from Premiere, I just drank more every day. So Prudence and I just sat and we drank. And 14 months went by. I don't think I left my house very often. And I got up to 193 pounds, I think. And then finally I saw my wife, Prudence, walk by me. We were in Florida and she walked by me with a glass of wine. It was like 2 a.m. It was Christmas Eve, December 24th of 17. And I looked at her, Mark, and I know you have these moments in your life. Everyone watching and listening to this has these moments where you just know it's time. You just know it's time. Either to start the business, to write the book, to go through the divorce, to file bankruptcy, anything that you've been putting off, you just know it's the time. I knew it was time for me to stop drinking alcohol. So I went and took my glass of Sangiovese, which is my favorite type of wine I drank, and I poured it in the drain. And in the next book I'm writing, I talk about the visual effect of watching that wine go around and around the drain. And my desire to drink went with it. And I can honestly tell you, December 24th, 17 is the last time I drank. I've never one time thought about drinking alcohol since I stopped.
So you just went cold turkey.
And what I did is I started telling myself new stories. And one story was that everything that had alcohol in it, I put my son's face on it. Everything. And I told myself, dude, you just lost your son. If you can't give up alcohol, what the F are you doing? What are you doing? When I in a keynote and I speak to recovery community, matter of fact, most of the tour stops I did were recovery community centers and rehab facilities. And I have to be careful because I know most people, they're not that pragmatic. But I just decided I was not going to drink. And if I did drink, like if I fell off the wagon, I think people like to say, I don't even use that term. If I decided to drink, then I would decide to drink. And then I'd have to decide the next day if I'm going to decide again. I've tried to break this down into very small micro steps and not torture myself with the word sobriety. Even the word sobriety to me, I don't use that word because to me, there's this mythical thing out there I'm fighting against. It implies I made a sacrifice, like I'm giving up alcohol. No, I didn't give up anything. I got my life back. That's all I did. So instead of me saying I am giving up alcohol or I'm sober or I'm even in recovery, I just choose not to drink for Jeff. Now, when I talk about this, I have to be careful because it pushes back against the AA narrative where you have to be held powerless to this thing called alcohol. So I just didn't want to play that game. I didn't want to play that game. It's not whether I'm right or wrong. It just works for Jeff.
Right.
And I do get into arguments with people people even tell me, Mark, this is the most crazy thing someone could say. You weren't really an alcoholic, Jeff. The only reason someone would say that because they're struggling with it. They would never say that if they weren't struggling with it. So they're projecting their insecurities with alcohol on me and saying, I can't quit like you did, so you must not be an alcoholic. So I quit really to help my wife, which is the irony of all ironies in this whole journey of mine. I didn't quit because I thought Jeff was an alcoholic. I was, no question about it. I quit because I wanted to help my wife. I saw her struggle. But after a few weeks and months of not drinking, I realized how much my life was getting better and Prudence's was getting worse. And she ended up going to rehab for I don't know how many days and got out, did okay, and then stumbled again. And then on June 29th of 2021, got another call. My wife was found dead from alcoholism at the age of 46. She weighed 88 pounds, was in a wheelchair. And she literally just couldn't be more literal about someone drinking themselves to death. So it was suicide by alcohol. So the statistic shows as an alcohol death, but the reality is it doesn't really matter to me. She's not here, but her inability to fight was what I struggled with, because I used Seth's death the best as I could to fight, to stay above ground, to find some way to honor them by living a life of advocacy. I couldn't get her to see it that way. And at some point, I had to make the hard decision. The boys or her? The boys or her? Imagine what I was going through myself. Buried Seth, alcoholic, struggling, haven't worked in a while. I don't have enough time taking care of Jeff. Now I got to take care of another adult and take care of a 13 and 15-year-old. I made the decision to buy Prudence a house across the street from her parents, because I said, if you're not going to quit drinking, I quit. If you're not going to quit, we have two boys here just lost their brother. You're the adult, they're not. I'm going to buy you a house and I'm going to live with the two boys. And you can work on your fight with alcoholism, because I can't save the world. I can't save everybody. This whole ship is sinking.
And meanwhile, how are you doing? You're trying to maintain recovery. You got the two boys and your wife. So how did you manage all this? How did you manage not to go back into the bottle?
I just kept seeing Seth's face. I don't know how much more easy I can present that narrative, is I just kept seeing Seth every time I even had a blip of alcohol, or I walked by the store, or was out for dinner with myself and I could easily order a glass of wine. I just kept thinking about Seth. And after Prudence died, then I was all in at that point. That's when I just said, screw this. I got to get out of my house. And that's when I bought the RV and went on this incredible journey called the Living Undeterred US tour, that ended up really cementing my advocacy in the eyes of others. Because, what guy 56 years old is going to take 20,000 miles of his own money? I spent $300,000 roughly doing the tour, trying to raise $1 million. And we only raised like 50,000.
Okay. I want to talk about that in a second, but I want to just sidetrack for a second. The other two boys, how were they doing? Because this had to be traumatic for them. They lost their brother. Now they lost their mother.
What I found out, Mark, was that sibling bereavement's the hardest thing for an adolescent to deal with, more than losing a mom or a dad or a pet or a grandpa. It's losing a brother or sister. And then they're older. So, Ian was 15, Roman was 13. And I found out when I wrote my first book, it was right after Seth died. It's called This One's for You, An Inspirational Journey Through Addiction, Death, and Meaning.
I saw that on Amazon.
That's when I was doing research on the impact on Ian and Roman. And that's when I saw, wow, yeah, I got to really right this ship. This is like the Titanic running into 3 icebergs. And that was all before Prudence died. And when she died, that's when I just realized, okay, the rest of my life, I'm dedicating to making sure no family ever goes through what we go through. And unfortunately, 900 Americans every day get the call that I got twice. 900 Americans die every day from the deaths of despair, alcohol, overdose, suicide. 900. And when I did the tour, it was like 825. So even since my advocacy, even since all my stuff, it's gotten worse. And that's very defeating in and of itself. When I put everything into this and I look at the numbers and they're still getting worse. So that was really, again, I have a gambling addiction like mindset. So I kept thinking, okay, this is what I told myself, Mark, and it isn't true, but this is where you tell yourself these stories. Failed as a dad, failed as a husband, failed as an author, failed as an advocate raising money. So what else can I fail? How much more can I fail? I failed myself. And that's when the idea of the app popped into my head. And that's what we ultimately do now with Brighton, is using phones and using AI and using all this incredible opportunities out there for people to start looking at preventative behavioral health versus with Seth. Once I took him to the doctor, it was all putting out fires from that point on. It was all symptom based. There was nothing prevention with Seth. No one ever said, how much sugar are you taking? How much sleep are you getting? Those things weren't discussed. It was all, what's the problem? Let's put out the fire. And that's where really this upstream mind, where I think I want to spend the rest of my life in, preventing fires from starting versus trying to get more ways that we can put out the fires, because I think that's been a lost cause for the time being.
Can we talk about the tour for a second?
Yeah.
Tell us about that. That is a very interesting story in and of itself.
Listen, I'm probably like you. I don't sit still. And
I
again,
know.
I have full blown ADHD, which I've never been diagnosed. I don't need to be diagnosed. And so you just know when you're 60. And so like when I was growing up, everyone was just called a spaz. I was hyper Jeffy. I hated public speaking. I'd sweat. My face would turn red. I'll get all jacked up. But I went to alcohol. That was my Adderall back in the day. I just went to drink because it calmed me. So what happened was after Prudence died, my mom died 3 months later. And I was just sick of LinkedIn posts, Facebook posts. I was sick of writing. I was sick of my house. So I swear to God, this is a true story. So I was just sitting around one day on my deck. I think I was having a cigar one night, and I thought, okay, I don't want to do anything I got to get out. I want to go out and talk to people. And I thought, why don't I just buy an RV or rent one and drive around the United States like for a week or two? And then I was on the internet Googling around, and this is where I came across Ryan Hampton, who's the biggest advocate I know in the recovery community and my best friend. That's how I met Ryan. Was I was Googling, has anyone else ever done this? And Ryan actually bought a Winnebago when he was recovering, and he drove all the way from, I think, Vegas all the way to DC. This was back like 3 or 4 years before I did my tour. So this would have been like in 18 or 19. And I thought, okay, someone's already done this. And so I grabbed about 10 copies of my book, and there's a camping world about an hour north. Actually, it's right where Seth died. Same town where Seth died, Waterloo, Iowa. I drove up on a whim, asked the sales manager, and I gave everyone there copies of my book, and I told my story. And I said, I want to buy an RV. I've never been in an RV my entire life. I want to buy an RV. I want to get it fully wrapped in black and gold and call this the Living Undeterred U.S. Tour and Mental Health Initiative. And I want to get a documentary guy, and I want to go around the United States with my boys. And I want to raise $1 million and give it to charity. That was my big, hairy, audacious goal, as James Collins says in Good to Great. That's what the carrot was in front of me. And I told myself, if I don't buy the RV today, I'm never going to do this. Like any other great idea you have, or idea, period, you have to do it. And so I walked out with this RV.
You walked in and bought an RV.
Yeah, 34-foot, $200,000 RV, and went to LinkedIn that day and said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to raise $1 million and give it all to recovery and communities and addictions and all that stuff. And that was the plan. Didn't turn out. I was just stunned. And here I am. I did get it wrapped and got it fully wrapped. We took off May 9th, 2020.
So did the boys go with you?
Yeah, they did. And a documentary guy went with me for about a week, and then he quit. He just couldn't keep up with my insane focus on helping people. Like I would see a homeless person, I would want to pull the RV over and go talk to him, or I'd want to buy him lunch, or I'd want to, everything I did, I just felt compelled to just help. I could see Seth and Prudence everywhere around the United States, everywhere. And I flew him back from Boise because he just said, Jeff, I can't, you're not structured, you're not organized. But it's hard to explain. I was addicted to advocacy so bad that it was costing me money. Long story short, we did 22,000 miles. We did 95 days. It almost killed me. I spent, I don't know, collectively probably $300,000, maybe $250 of my own money. And we raised about $50,000. That was it. So again, now I failed as an advocate. So all these failures are just popping up. Loser. So I'm like, what the F do I have to do to get people to help me? What do I have to do? I've got this effing billboard flying down the interstate, 20,000 miles. We're the billionaires. We're the CEOs. Where's all these celebrities and these actors and these athletes with all this effing money that want to help people? I'm a dad that lost half my family. Where is the help? I think a dentist in Colorado was my largest check was $5,000. Never even met him. I couldn't get people to get behind this thing. So I'm sitting at a KOA in Little Rock, Arkansas with my youngest son, just him and I at the end of the tour. I'm in tears because my assistant Molly's, Jeff, you need to get another $10,000. We got these bills, we got another. I'm like, we're not raising any money at these stops. We had some good events, a couple hundred people, I think was our biggest. And then I would drive 9 hours and have 2 people show up in a Marriott. It was disorganized, didn't plan very well. I believed that people would get behind me. I'm from Iowa, man. You build it, they'll come, right? Field of dreams. That's what I believed, that I would just build it and they would come. They didn't. But the ones that did were amazing. And now they're investors, they're partners of USOVR. So that's where my youngest son said, "Hey, Dad, what's next?" And I'm like, "On to my next failure, son. On to my next failure." I'm not going to quit. Quitting to me was suicide. That was the only last thing I could possibly do, was just take my life, because I was going to run out of money. I was going to run out of friends. I was going to run out of everything. If I could sell my soul, I would. And I told myself that this has to work, or this will be talked about at your eulogy. And I was that committed to this app. That's when I started it. That's why I said there was no backup plan. There was no like part-time for 2 years and then I'll do it full-time. It was, you got something in your stomach burning, this ember, I like to call it. And it gets down to, it gets almost cold, almost extinguished. And then boom, you meet Mark, or boom, you meet Ryan, or boom, you meet Omani or somebody else in my life. And then it gets extinguished. It gets way down there. And then boom, you meet somebody. And that's what's happening in my life right now. And I'm secular, so I'm agnostic. I don't really believe in all that stuff, but I do believe in frequency and vibrations. And I do believe in, if you get up in the morning and you think, I'm going to net give more than I net take. I'm going to give more than I take. I don't know how. I'm going to give more than I take. You do that every single day. I just can't believe at some point abundance comes in your life. And that could be love. It could be money. That's not my motivation. It could be opportunities. It could be experiences. It has to work that way, right?
I want to ask you 2 more questions. What happened to the RV?
It's in storage.
Okay.
I didn't have time to even get the cover off. I put it in storage, and I have to get it next week and move it to another facility because it's indoor storage, and it just sits there. And right now it's just, I'll get to it when I can. I want to sell it.
What happened to the belt? You said that you did something with the belt.
Oh man. Okay. I carried it around with me for the whole tour, and a friend of mine who's become a dear friend, partner, investor, his name's Omani Carson, and he is a philanthropist in Omaha. Done quite well for himself. He owns all the Carson Wealth Managements in the United States. And he invited me to come out to his community after I made a post on LinkedIn about Seth and Prudence. So we were both in the same industry. He's done quite well. And he invited me to come out to his community. Unbeknownst to me, it's a spiritual type community. And there's a lot of work being used with plant-based medicine, so psychedelics. And I got into it and had my first experience with ketamine and psilocybin, and it changed everything for me. It quieted my ego. It put me in more balance and a harmony in my life with everything around me. It got me to understand that I was going through life with a flashlight, and where my attention went is wherever I aimed the flashlight. And once you get your ego to quiet, you have a spotlight now all around you. So I don't run through life now so self-absorbed about me and my ego and my accomplishments and all that. And so what psychedelics did was just like rewire my pathways, and I'm telling myself a new story. The most recent psychedelic experience I had at his ranch, the Freedom Healing Ranch is what it's called. You bring an item to the altar, Mark. So everyone brings an item. I just felt like I wanted to bring the belt. It was a leather belt. So an animal died for this belt. I brought the belt, and I just felt compelled to donate it back to the community. And so the last day we're doing our integration, and I said, this belt, which came from an animal, was wrapped around my son's arm. There's so much hate and anger and death and despair and misery. I want to hand the belt around. I want every single person here to put as much love as they can into this belt. And I'm going to leave it here on the ranch. And so for half an hour, I watched people take the belt, and they cried and they laughed, and it was an amazing experience to watch a community of loving people take something like a belt that to me I thought was going to be an image, a symbol of hope, became a weight on my ankle and just pulled me under constantly. And then when the belt was done, I actually found a tree on the ranch, and I wrapped it around like it was wrapped around my son's arm, and it allowed the universe to take it back now. So instead of throwing it in the garbage, and then putting the negative vibrations out there. Now the belt's wrapped around a tree, and I haven't been back. I'm going back in July to the ranch. I want to see if the belt's still there. But part of me thinks that the universe took it back now. And again, it's an odd story, but it had a beautiful ending for the belt instead of just being thrown in the garbage and then discarded. So that's where it is. It's on a tree in Omaha, Nebraska.
Let's talk about Brighton. Tell me about that. I know that's your baby now.
When the universe takes from you, it also gives. And sometimes those gifts are very clear. Maybe it's an instruction, right? Could be an idea comes into your head. When Seth died at 23, 3 weeks later, his daughter was born. We didn't know about her for a year. So I did not know Seth had a child. And when I got the call from Justin, his friend, and said, hey, I think Seth has a daughter, I'm like, no way.
Do we think
No
Seth knew?
I think he did, because they had broken up and got back together. And in that culture, there's a lot of hookups, I guess is a lack of a word, but there's a lot of breakups and things go. It's the drug community. There's not a lot of trust and honor. So I think Seth, I think he was fairly certain, but he never told me, like when he was in prison, when I was visiting him, that he never told me that this could be a possibility because he had been out 60 days. I'm trying to do the math when all this could have happened. He was in prison for about 6 months. So probably happened before he went to prison, but I think he knew, but I think he was going to wait for sure. But when I saw her, Mark, I just knew she's 9 now, and she is the reason I do what I do, other than my 2 boys. And I'm talking about, like, her name knows what makes it special. Her name is Brighton. So I like to joke when I talk. It could have been Tina, Diane, Linda, Mary. It just happened to be Brighton. It's what a effing beautiful gesture by the universe to take half my family. Oh, and by the way, 3 months after my wife died, my mom died. And what I did share is that whole weekend of Christmas of 2021, I sat in the closet with a gun to my head, literally counting down to 10 from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all weekend. I was just tired of death. Death is everywhere. Everywhere I turned, somebody I cared about was dying. And I thought to myself, the real death can't be any worse than living for me. What's going to be worse on the other side? It can't be. This is already hell. And that's the pitiful story I told myself in the closet. But Brighton, she kept me alive. Roman and Ian kept me alive. My dad's 95 and he kept me alive. And there are really good reasons to still stay here, even though you may feel you've lost everything. No one really loses everything. You always have something. It could be a pet. It could be a neighbor. It could be, I don't know. It's just switching that mindset, Mark, from fear and scarcity. Woe is me. I'm a victim. Shame, guilt. So many of us play into an abundance mindset, a victor mindset versus victim, or as I like to say, better, not bitter. I'm on my 9th year now of Seth dying. I was hospitalized last year for a breakdown. So I'm fully cognizant that there's no mountain to climb. There's no summit I'm going to reach. I'm not going to wake up and say, hey, Mark, I won, man. I made it. That's an illusion. I just got to stay in motion. I have to keep putting out good vibes. I got to keep sharing the story so Seth and Prudence don't really die. I got to make sure Brighton understands that this can't be the reason why she decides to start doing drugs and alcohol, because these cycles repeat themselves. Her mom's a meth addict. We don't know where her mom is, Brittany.
So who does she live with?
Grandma. Yeah, I would have adopted her, Mark, but we didn't know about her for a year, obviously, so that made it very difficult. And then my wife, I'm not trying to throw my wife under the bus because everybody grieves, definitely, but there was something about Prudence that when Seth died, that was like the line in the sand. I don't want to cross over. I don't want to be an advocate like you, Jeff. I don't want to write a book. She never met Brighton, and it tears my heart out. Not that Brighton probably even would have remembered, but maybe that would have got Prudence to stop drinking. I don't know, but I tried to get her, and she kept saying, maybe Christmas, maybe just, that does always bother me that I didn't just get her and just drive over to my wife's house and just surprise her. Why didn't I do that? So again, I do have elements of guilt still, but a lot less than it was when all this went down. But yeah, so she's a beautiful young girl and she loves life, and I'm worried about her a lot. But my role as a grandpa isn't to tell her not to do drugs, to tell her not to drink alcohol, I think my role as a grandpa is to make sure she knows who her dad was, who her grandma was, and that nobody loves her any more that's ever lived than her dad. And I tell her that every day I see her. Where's your dad? In my heart. Yeah, he's in mine too. And he's watching you every day, Brighton. He loves you. He's here. He just can't be here physically with you, but he's here with you. And that's as deep as I get with her right now. But she did ask me how did he die. She asked me about addiction. She's so sad, Mark. 9 years old. 9 years old. And to ask me, how did my dad die? You wonder why I won't go back to drinking. As little anger I have in my heart, it's towards substances. I'm not even mad at fentanyl because when my dad had a stroke a couple summers ago, fentanyl kept him alive. So fentanyl, I'm not mad at fentanyl. I'm not even mad at the drug deal. I've let all that go. I don't think carrying anger and hatred in my heart the rest of my life is going to be putting out positive vibrations in the universe. I hope whoever sold them drugs pays a price, and I don't hope them to die, but they should spend time incarcerated. They should learn from what they did. I don't know anything about them, but I never went down that road. I never wanted to be that dad protesting with signs and shouting and yelling and hate and anger. There's lots of moms and dads that do that, and we need that. We need advocacy. We need that fierce fight to get the laws changed, to put these pharmaceutical companies like Purdue Pharmaceuticals on hold, to bankrupt them, to hold people accountable. But that's not my heart, man. I just don't have it. I think my experiences with plant-based medicine really pulled that out of me. And I'm 60 in April, and it's like, I don't want to spend my last years of my life an angry, bitter old man. It's a choice.
I get it. And it's quite amazing. You're quite an amazing guy. With the time that we have left, can we talk about the app that you launched?
Yeah.
What's it called? How do people find it? And what is the purpose behind it?
The idea came from, I did financial planning, and in investing, we would gather assets. We would do a plan on people. Then I would recommend that you put 5% in large cap stocks, 10% in real estate. That's called diversification. When I got into mental health, when I got into this side of the fence, the healthcare system, there was no diversification. Everything was episodic. Hey, your son's not paying attention in school. Go see a doctor, get a bottle, get Adderall. It's like everything was focused on just that flashlight concept, not the whole person. Seth had multiple things he was struggling with. It wasn't just fidgeting in school. There was other things. He had body dysmorphia. There was lots of things going on with him. And I thought, why don't we build the nation's first mental wellness planning app similar to a financial planning app? Same concept, right? Plan for your retirement, plan for good mental health. And if I did, what would my human asset classes be like? What would I invest in? And we came up with health, wealth, and purpose. So Brighton aims to improve human flourishing at the intersection of health, wealth, and purpose. And we did it on an app, which 95% of the world has access or owns a smartphone. And we used AI from day one, which is really, I think, the differentiator than a lot of startups out there that was late to the AI game. My CTO and co-founder invented AI initially. So AI is what our app is based on. And we use AI as a pattern recognition through mood tracking and journal entering. So we can show people, especially on their journals, which I do every day, what type of patterns, what time of the day are my most stressful, what are my eating habits, my sleeping patterns, who am I hanging out with? These are all things AI is good at because the human memory only has so much capacity and bandwidth. We get distracted and we forget things. AI doesn't. And not just that, AI now can organize things and say, hey, Jeff, we're noticing a pattern. When you first get up in the morning, those are your toughest times. So here are 3 things you can do to fight that off. And that's what I think I found out with our Brighton app, is that it's really good at that upstream layer in behavioral healthcare. Then now we are in addition to symptoms and treatment and putting out the fire because we're prior. I think that's the place we've really nestled well.
Okay, so it's up and running. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. It's live on the App Store. It's $6.95 a month. And you can get a weekly plan as well. You can pay annual. It's like $66 a year. So we wanted to make it very affordable and price it in that way.
Okay. So what does the future look like for Jeff?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I want to get up tomorrow morning and have my feet hit the ground, get my coffee, and go at it again. I really stopped thinking too much further ahead than weekends anymore. I just figured if I always do, stay in action, keep doing, keep giving, give and give with no expectations. Who knows? I could get stage 4 cancer. I don't think the universe owes me anything. It doesn't owe me anything less. The universe isn't fair. Multiple people can have multiple bad things happen to them, and then someone else can never have any bad thing happen to them. So I don't think because I lost half my family that the universe owes me anything. I would like a break from people dying in my life.
It's an incredible journey. How do you spell the app so the folks can go to the App Store and download it?
It's BRIGHTN, Brighton Wellness. So Brighton, her real name's BRIGHTON. Her name is we spelled it, the app, BRIGHTN, just to protect a little bit of her privacy.
Yeah. I would encourage everybody who's going to see this podcast to go to the App Store and download this, because it's a game changer. And I'm so glad that you came on. And I read your bio and I'm like, I don't know if this even does Jeff any justice, because there's been so much going on in your life, so much tragedy and triumph, and it's almost like the universe was like trying to tell you something, but in the harshest possible way.
Yeah.
Right.
We all have these lessons. However you do. I'd like to have you on my podcast and here turn a spotlight on you a little bit, because that's what drives you to do your podcast and all these things. And we all do. It doesn't have to be as dramatic as mine or as painful, but if you don't have any kids and your cat got hit by a car, that's devastating. That's devastating. Or your mom that is the greatest ally for you in your life, and she gets breast cancer and dies, gets hit by a drunk driver. It's like, we all have that.
Yeah. Jeff, thanks for coming on. You don't have to ask me twice to come on yours. I'm coming.
The invite will be on the way.
I love it. I love it. For the folks who are watching, thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn more about how we help to save families whose loved ones are suffering from substance use, mental health disorders, and failed attempts at recovery, our website is mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. That's mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. And thank you for tuning in. Jeff, thank you for coming on. This may be the best one we've done yet. So thank you for coming on. I'm really grateful.
It's my honor, man. I'm happy to reciprocate it too. So looking forward to it.